Hey, this is Luke. Today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about value, because value is something that's very important. We hear it talked about a lot, but value is really how we make choices in our lives. We're always going to choose to do something, or choose an action, or choose to say yes to something based off of the amount of value that it offers us. If there's something that we think will provide us more value than another option, we will always go for the option that provides us with the most value. So we need to discuss a little bit about value here, because I think it's an important thing to talk about. But how do we evaluate value? How do we know what has value and what doesn't? Well, to take it back, value had its very roots in nature, right? Back in the day, what gave us value was something that increased our chances of survival or increased our chances of a reproduction, right? So our family lineage, our genes can live on. If we don't live on, our genes will. And so, back in the day, this was a very easy thing to tell, and our emotions often determined what had the most value. They were our signals. So the thoughts are the language of the brain, and the emotions are the language of the body. And what happens is, when something happens in our external environment, we have an emotional response to that. And our emotional response then will signal the gene and let our brain and our body know what to do. So for example, let's take a situation that's, I know it's overplayed a little bit, but, back in the historic ages, when there were hunters and scavengers, and you were out, let's say, hunting, and you hear a noise from behind the bushes, and it's a lion. So what happens is, you pay attention to the environment, and the environment invokes a certain emotion, fear. And what happens is that emotion signals the gene, produces adrenaline, you pay attention more to your outer environment. Your body's preparing for fight or flight. And so our emotional response, the language of the body, when it came to survival and reproduction, was a very great indicator of value. But nowadays, there is a such thing as perceived value, not true value. And so today we are in very safe environments, whether we think so or not. Modern medicine has made it so our lifespans are a lot longer. We really have control over a lot of things. A lot of the unsafety in our lives is self-imposed. We don't have that line. It's just very uncommon these days. And so we live in these safe environments, and our emotional response is still that indicator of what has value or not. And so there's a such thing as perceived value. Something that creates a good emotional response in us, but may not be the thing that provides, the most value in terms of survival and reproduction. It might not be the thing that's going to get you closer to your goals. And so, for an example, one example I could use here is binge watching Netflix. Now, I'm not saying watching Netflix is bad. I do it too. It's fun. As humans, we've progressed to the point to where we have this technology. It's a fun thing. People put a lot of work into creating intriguing storylines. It's great to indulge in. It's part of being a human. We should entertain ourselves. However, binge watching Netflix, it becomes a habit. It's something that's sparking an emotion in us, making us want to keep going, and we're perceiving that as value. We're being entertained. We're feeling good while watching it. It's perceived value. But is it really going to get us to our goals? Is it really going to bring us that sense of fulfillment, that happiness we're really after? It's not. So binge watching Netflix over maybe going to the gym, perceived value. Our emotions get us caught up in this. So it becomes an issue and something that we need to make the right choices on. We need to be able to become aware of really has true value, because value is what we determine all our choices off of. So we need to be aware of the true value and always be reminding ourselves, is that getting us closer to our goals? Is that getting closer to my fulfillment, my reaching that state of wholeness? And so if we go to a restaurant and we're eating out with family, we're enjoying some company, and comes time to decide what we want to drink, and Coca-Cola sounded really good. It's got that nice sugary taste that we crave, and it makes us feel good. It's got some perceived value, but we all know that taking the water is the healthier thing. It's going to provide our body with something that it needs and make us feel a little bit better and actually aid in our survival and not hurt our health. And so we need to be aware of all those things. I know those are just like little examples that aren't the biggest thing, and I know we're all a little bit conscious of that to a certain extent, but it's a good example to show perceived value versus true value. We really need to practice being aware of what has true value and what has just perceived value, and what is going to get us closer to reaching that state of being, reaching that wholeness and happiness, because that ultimately is the goal. And so then how do we navigate? The hardest part about change is not making the same choices that you did the day before. The hardest part about change is breaking from your programs. Breaking from what you've taught your body feels good and has that perceived value, and making a choice that's actually going to lead to change in your life. The hardest part about change is not making those same choices. We've conditioned ourselves to act a certain way and behave in a certain way. It's our state of being. And so this process of change starts with that awareness. It starts with maybe taking a little step back when you're new to this, and being like, when you're about to do something, be like, let me think about it. Is that providing value? Is that getting me closer to my goals and wholeness? Or is that just making me feel good in the moment? And when you become aware of it, then you got to make the right choice. And it's not always easy, obviously. We've been conditioned. We might want to do the easier thing, or the thing that's going to make us feel good in the moment, right? But change comes when you make the right choices over and over. You need to just make the right choices, take the right actions, do the right thing enough times to where you prove it to yourself. And when you've done it enough times to where you've proved it to yourself, now you're going to do it again. You're going to replace that old program with a new one that is better for you. And over time, it takes practice. You're going to slip. You're going to fall. Well, you might not, but I'm pretty sure all of us do. It's the process of change. It's your initiation. You're taking the information that you've learned and initiating it until you internalize it. So you got to initiate that information enough times. You got to become aware of the decision you're making or the choice that you have, and choose what's actually going to provide you the value and get you closer to wholeness and happiness. And when you do it enough times, you will reprogram yourself. You will recondition yourself into something that's going to actually make a difference. Conditioning isn't always bad. It's unfortunate that most of us have just been conditioned in a negative way, conditioned into keeping ourselves stuck and separate and limited, instead of conditioning ourselves into being whole, powerful, unlimited, and happy. So we can start that process of reconditioning our brains and bodies, all right? Start making the right choices, start becoming aware of that, and practice. See if you can do it a couple times throughout each day, throughout the next week. See if you can come up, just be more aware throughout your day. Is an action you're taking providing you with actual value, or is it just perceived value? The process of change definitely has to start with that awareness, because if we're not making the right choices, we're not going to change. If we're making the same choices over and over and living in that same past, doing the same things, how can we ever expect change if we're not doing anything different, if we're not thinking new thoughts, feeling new emotions, and making new choices and new actions? So practice awareness. It's where change starts. Thank you for coming along this journey with me, and I really do hope you stick around for a while.
1, 2, 3,